Welcome to Plead the Facts, presented by KI Legal. On today's episode, Andreas Koutsoudakis, co-founder of KI Legal, is joined by Andrew Rigie, executive director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, to discuss how KI Legal and the Alliance have worked together and what is in store next.
Welcome, my good friend. We've gotten to know each other quite well over the last 10 years. At this point, we've since had kids. Our kids know each other. We've been on vacation together. But I guess the most, substantive stuff is, the roll up your sleeves type of work. And so we're really excited to have you here. It's been definitely a roller coaster. We just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. Couldn't have been done without a leader, without Bob Bookman and everyone else on the board and the founding members and the individual members, the people who show up in the blink of an eye, go to Times Square now, show up at City Hall now, sign this petition now. That all requires a lot of work, and that's what organizing means. So we're excited to have you here and to share more about the Alliance one-on-one with all of our clients, all of our viewers, and anyone who's really curious about the Alliance and reaches us in some capacity so they can hopefully become members. It's like a default action on our end every time we get a new restaurant client. We say first hour, become a member and show us that and you're good. We try because it's a power and voice. So tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up at the Alliance.
Thank you. Excited to be on videocast, podcast in this nice new office, and proud of you and the team for doing everything that you're doing at KI Legal. And I think it's symbolic of kind of what the Hospitality Alliance is all about. We formed 10 years ago, and we were just looking at a photo of you and me at our launch event on September 24th, 2012.
Crazy.
We look a little bit different.
More hair, oversized suit, all that stuff.
But I think the goal when we launched the organization was really to give our city's restaurants, bars, nightclubs, hospitality sector at large an independent voice in the halls of government, right? Our industry is so vital to the economic foundation, but also the social and cultural fabric of New York City. Think about New York City without its restaurants and nightlife. It's impossible. Think about how New York City is a melting pot of people from all walks of life. I mean, you know it, you live it, your father lived it. He was a prime example of someone who comes here, from another place and is able to build a life, a career, it has such a positive impact on the lives of so many other people and the community that surrounds the restaurant. And we wanted to harness that vitality and support those hardworking entrepreneurs that create these great restaurants and nightlife, establishments, and give them a voice in the halls of government. Make sure that when there are policies being enacted that are going to impact their business, our Hospitality Alliance is there at the table, talking about the policies, how it will hurt or how it will support, hopefully.
What's your wish list? What are the things? They turn to you for the voice.
Yeah, how do we streamline the permanent licensing process, cut bureaucracy, cut the red tape, and also be not just reactive to things our industry doesn't like, but be proactive and fight for policies that are going to support us. So in addition to all the advocacy, really focus on education and training. Alerts that we've worked on with you, letting business owners know what they can do, what they can't do, how they stay in compliance, because it's not good enough to just be a hospitable host or a great cook.
Sure.
To succeed in the hospitality industry in New York City in 2022, which is crazy to even say that.
So you paused at 2020 because there's been like literal pause for 2.5 years.
You need to be a business person and you need to align yourself with firms like KI Legal that is going to look out for you and make sure that while you're doing the hospitality, you're creating these great dining, drinking, and socializing experiences for your customers, that someone is there looking out to make sure that, all your contracts say the right thing, your policies and procedures are all in line with the various and ever-changing laws. So I think there is a real alliance between New York City Hospitality Alliance and firms like KI Legal in partnership with the city's restaurants, bars, and nightclubs.
It's huge, and this industry is super nuanced. I grew up, my whole life at this point. You knew my father very, very well. It was like a mini city hall at Tribeca's Kitchen when he had it, and it was a welcome one, and still is. This industry is so nuanced, and it has these industry versions of of regular laws, right? Here are the wage and hour laws for every company in the country.
Yes.
But then here is the state laws from New York for the wage and hour laws. And then there's the city, and then there's also these industry specific variations of it, and it becomes this impossible thing. And so 40 years ago when my dad first came here and started working in the industry, that wasn't the case. You did just have to focus on hospitality and rolling up your sleeves. And like you said, now you have this, necessary business side of it. I always tell our clients, front of the house, you keep the customers, you keep them coming in and keep them coming back, make sure they're happy and warranting the price they're paying for whatever you're serving. But whether you make money or not, whether you stay alive or not, it all happens behind the scenes. In the halls of government, in the restaurant's office, in your lawyer's office, in your accountant's office. You no longer can treat it as a passion business, something that you're really good at and you've done your whole life. You have to treat it like a business, and it's impossible as an individual business owner to do all of those things without someone thinking ahead for you, right? Having their finger on the pulse, which I think is one of the biggest things the Alliance has done, as you mentioned it before, seat at the table. I always, and I'm a very loud New Yorker, but definitely from the restaurant side of it, but, there's all these big industries in the city, and, in 2012 when we first met, there was no alliance, right? And we were, at City Hall at an expert table. I was just a few years out of law school at that time, but I had, 600-700 diners. And so somehow I ended up at a table next to you and, we're speaking with them. But they had already shoved those, ABC letter grades down our throat. This was reactive, like you said before. And so fast forward to today, you're always looking and thinking, living and breathing the issues that are affecting the industry, speaking with operators, speaking with service providers, us, other firms, other accounting firms, whatever the service industry is, servicing the restaurants, and you're trying to figure out what's next and actually going there. But you've reached a point where the industry has become the default source of information for people who are either considering something for an industry, or even against it. You're the authority. The Alliance has become the source of information. It's synonymous. There's no restaurant industry without the New York City Hospitality Alliance, and that is, something you can't see it on video, but it gives me the chills, just like it did at the 10-year anniversary at Slate. We went from the grand opening, I forgot where it was in the meatpacking district, but it was, downstairs, low level, a lot of fun for sure, a few hundred people to a few thousand people, a couple of weeks ago. And it's amazing, and it shows you what, that is evidence of how united the industry is. We can compete all day long, and God knows we do. We have 10 restaurants in every block, but there are certain things that we're all completely aligned in, and without the Alliance, you wouldn't have a way to unify that voice, scattered.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's what it's about. It's how do you get the information to people in the industry so they get it. You were talking about labor. We are a labor-intensive industry, right? We are a people industry. For better or worse, we require a lot of people to work in a restaurant. They're from all backgrounds, all walks of life, and they have to interact. And trying to explain, like I'm sure you do with your clients, there are federal labor laws. There are state labor laws. And over the past decade or a little bit more than that, city government has got very involved in labor laws as well. And then there's the general labor laws that apply to all industries, but then there are hospitality, restaurant, nightlife specific laws that impact just our industry. So how do you stay on
You
top
forgot all the different positions that are separated within them, like the New York Hospitality Industry Wage Order that says food service, other food service, and so on and so forth, right?
So
it's
how
a trap
do you get
in
this
general.
information to folks so they can understand it, because you can have the most successful restaurants. You could have, reservations a month out, whatnot, people lining up to get in the door. But, the situation, and it's unfortunate, where a minor technical violation of a complex labor law can result in significant liability. So that goes back to what I said before. You need to be a compliance officer, not just a cook, not just a hospitable host. And I think that that's really important. I think that our industry has gotten to a place where there is a natural professionalization if you want to be successful. And in the past, not that people weren't professionals, but the nature of what you know and where a lot of your bandwidth and attention is focused on is about compliance and about just general operations. And I think that we have done a lot with our seminars, our education, our training, our advocacy when it comes to all these issues. But it's not just it's labor. You mentioned the health department letter grade system. When the Bloomberg administration first came into office, there was something about $12 million a year in annual health department fines from restaurants. That peaked at over $52 million in, I think, 2010 or 2012, right around when the Hospitality Alliance...
Right when we started making noise, right?
Exactly, and we were able to advocate and reduce fines by tens and tens of millions of dollars. Now, annual fines are somewhere around $20 million. Still, about $10 million more than they were when Bloomberg first took office, but we've been able to reduce those fines significantly without seeing a big increase in foodborne illness. In fact, I think if anything, restaurants have gotten safer. We focused even more on implementing high food safety standards.
Embrace compliance.
Exactly. So, there's a lot of those types of things that are at play, but I think what's most important when you look historically at different industries, whether it's teachers and the teachers union, or different unions, or associations that represent the real estate industry, they may not get everything they want, but they're generally noted as organizations that have influence, that are organized, that are in the halls of government when decisions and policies are being decided. And for way too long, if you were a restaurant owner, a bar owner, you did not feel like you had this organized, powerful, and respected voice in those halls of government. And that's really what we tried to do with the hospitality lines. We can be aggressive, we can be pushy, but we also need to be reasonable, we need to be smart, and we need to operate in a way that people respect it. And I think that has allowed us to influence policy in meaningful ways that impacts our industry in a positive way. And it just goes to show restaurant owners, other small business owners, that when you make the time, because everyone's busy, but when you make the time to be unified, when you make the time to be proactive instead of reactive, and you decide to talk about it, and then you decide to actually be about it, you can affect change.
But you got to do that consistently, right? It's like, you mentioned about the letter grades and how much the fines have gone down over the course of 10 years. That was a chip away process, right? Now you have, there's a lot of changes just in that one example, right? You get an A, now you got 12 months, and then there's all these different things that have been implemented that balance it because it was so aggressive, because just as you said, for far too long it was the go-to piggy bank. Just go to the restaurants. There's no one who's going to argue against us because we weren't organized in that way. Let's talk numbers. Hospitality Alliance was founded with how many restaurant members, and where are we today?
So we had what we called founding trustees. We had 29 founding trustees that represented restaurants, nightlife establishments, a hotel, and certain industry suppliers to the industry. They came up big time for the industry, helped fund the organization for the first 3 years to make sure it could get off the ground, and continue to support us this day. Over the past 10 years, we have, thousands of restaurants, bars, nightclubs, from small mom and pops to 4-star restaurants to pubs to nightclubs and everything in between in our network throughout the 5 boroughs. And I think our 10th anniversary celebration, which you referenced before, which was amazing, was really reflective of where we came from. And reflective of our industry. You'd walk throughout the venue and there was just every generation represented. There was every background, every color, every this, every that. that was really reflective
So
to the
special.
melting pot that is New York City. And that's what gave me the chills, and what gave me, and what I got feedback from. It's like, wow, when we walked through that room, the diversity of the room, not just for diversity's sake, but for a true
Authentic.
representation of who belongs and who makes up this amazing hospitality industry. And we've become so fortunate because, like, they're not just members or not just like people. They become dear friends like you. And when you call on people, they recognize that the work we're doing is impactful, it's important, and they turn out and they turn up.
And they're excited. Those are my favorite events, by the way. They're awesome. Bahamas bumping into that trip. Our kids got to play. We did cartwheels and pool, and we went out and we had dinner. I mean, those are memories. Those are friendships that are, really strong and built over the years. And our kids remember them, right? Before we even started this, talking about when are we going to get the kids together again. Tell me about how many restaurants are there? I know the answer, just to bring this up and highlight a point that I've been making a lot recently about how much more work there is, how much more organizing we can get. Independence in New York City, 5 boroughs.
Yeah, well, so throughout the 5 boroughs, pre-pandemic, according to the city's health department that licenses eating and drinking establishments, there's more than 25,000 eating and drinking establishments throughout the 5 boroughs.
So if you're 30 years old, you can eat. God willing, you have another 30 years ahead of you, hopefully more. But if you're 30 years old, you can literally eat at a different restaurant every day for the rest of your life and never eat at the same restaurant twice.
There's a book there.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, this is like, the math is just mind-blowing. And that's just the 5 boroughs. What a journey, right? You can have dinner, lunch, pick a day, pick a meal. You probably could cover more than one meal in that amount of time, right?
And think about how reflective of the world it is. Because the types of cuisines and the types of experience will add such a richness of culture and hospitality to you where you can't do that elsewhere. I was just watching something on Instagram or something, it popped up, and a guy just did a food tour along the 7 train, starting going out from like Long Island
That's
City,
amazing.
making it all the way out to Flushing and stopping just like every type of cuisine. And it was just such a cool, interesting thing. And again, I think it's what is so reflective of New York City and why our industry is so important, and also why when we do unify under the umbrella of the hospitality industry, we are able to do important, impactful things. Not to mention stuff that we do outside of just servicing our customers and providing hospitality. But, throughout the pandemic, it was so devastating to our industry, to the workforce. But we really, in the midst of our own crisis, went to serve folks who were going through their own crisis when it was so dangerous and so much uncertainty. We were out there preparing meals, delivering them to people's doors while they were in lockdown. We were delivering meals to hospitals, to the frontline workers, the essential workers. When there's a flood, there's a fire, families are displaced. The local restaurants providing meals. Food is something, again, I keep going back to what unifies us, but, what's that saying? I think maybe it's Jose Andres says it, we need to build longer tables, and it's so true.
Like in Europe, in Greece, the tables are just never ending. They're all connected. You said something early on, which I want to bring back to that. You said, can you think of what it would be like? Something along the lines of, you didn't have all of these restaurants. Sadly, we know what it's like to not have all of these restaurants. We lived it for 2 years. A large part of that, of the pandemic, we were completely shut down. The world, the city, literally shut down. There was no reason to stay in New York City. If you didn't have your favorite restaurants, there was no reason to come to New York City from out of state or out of boroughs. It's literally the fabric of our communities. Without it, there's nothing that you come here for. Without that piece, everything else becomes extremely secondary. It does unite. And you mentioned about how we service the community. I don't think I've ever told you this, but after my dad passed and I opened up, we did the renovation in 2020, and I was supposed to open November 30th. That was going to be the Friends and Family Night, which is also St. Andrew's Day, named my name and my father's. But I knew from the Alliance that there was already starting to be talks about potentially another shutdown in a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, 1 week. So I said, you know what? I had just spent 3 weeks training everyone, getting the whole store ready for a launch, day after November 30th. And here I am not doing it. And so what did we do? I knew about this a week before. We prepared meals and we brought them. I brought my kids, I brought my mother, and we went to the Bowery Mission. And we prepared individual Thanksgiving dinners. At that time, everything had to be individually packed. And that's what we did for Thanksgiving. We hand delivered it to them, and that's what you do. Like, what am I going to throw it out, right? There's so much more we could do, both for the industry, but also for our communities. And I have some crazy ideas. We've talked about them many times, different podcasts. But it's so critical. You know how I feel about the industry.
No, it's a beautiful thing, and when the city's restaurant nightlife industry got shut down during the pandemic,
shut down.
Boom.
Literal
It was a shock to the
triple.
system. And while we were impacted in so many ways, what was such a shock to the system for so many people was our streetscape, our vibrant, active, busy New York City streetscape went dark. The restaurants and bars were closed. That means no activity on the street during the days. Dark streets at night. Pretty eerie.
No foot traffic.
And
on
people
the
recognize
stores.
that, and I think they recognized how important it is, not just to all the other reasons we spoke about, but just, public safety on the street, activity on the street,
Yep.
and that whole just city ecosystem that revolves around our city's restaurants.
It's our
and
energy.
nightlife. And that's, again, what we're trying to tell the story of, and then turning that narrative into action to support this industry and support the recovery. When we first got outdoor dining and then it got cold, first it was June 2020, it was warm, then it was hot in the summer, then it got cool, we never knew what was gonna happen, and then it was the winter. And the fact that people, including myself, would be bundled up in winter coats with scarves and hats, eating outdoors. It was like freezing. The food would come out, you'd see steam. It would almost like freeze before they put it down at the table. But people did it because there was a human need to have that social interaction. There was a human desire to be able to support your local businesses, the people that worked at those restaurants, and just have a great meal and feel a little sense of normalcy when the whole entire world was anything but normal. And it just, again, goes to the core of all that we try to do at the New York City Hospitality Alliance, and what I know that you do with KI Legal with all of your clients, is just kind of harness that vitality, provide support to people, because at the end of the day, we are all in this together. Restaurants, what do you have? Family meal, because we're a big family, for better or worse. There's great times, there's dysfunctional times, but we are family. And we're much better when we're all together and working together in a singular direction.
Education is one of those things. You mentioned family just now. Education in the industry is something that I think is critically necessary. It's and it'll never stop being necessary at this point. But when my father came to this country, and so many other immigrants from all over the world came to this country, they were fine. My dad's first restaurant was 10 years after he came here at 14. He still probably didn't speak a word of English, but here he is, has a place in, Tribeca. Now that's a lot harder to do, right? Especially because all of the increased costs, all of the increased expenses, the complexity of it, you need more people, professionals coming in to help you stay alive and grow. Education is critically important. You can't get away with what you used to get away with, right? You have to know how to use Excel. You have to know how to use technology. So education is critically important, but it can be done, right? Just like my father and many other people came and didn't even speak English, but learned. Well, now there's the next level of growth, and that's one thing that I think the Alliance is critically valuable for members, and in general. I mean, the amount of resources that are on the website are insane, and how many times have people just asked, hey, do you know the answer to this, or can you help with this person, unrelated to a new matter for the firm or whatever it is. But tell me about some of the things that I think the Alliance is going to be, that you plan on focusing on this year in terms of education or areas of need, both in advocacy and education.
Yeah, so headed into the end of the year, we are going to focus on, as we usually do, kind of just end of year things people need to know. So making sure your employee handbook is up to date, a recap of what laws have changed over the past year, just to make sure that people remember and following, or provide them an opportunity to ask questions, to get answers to those questions. And then things like focusing on New Year's, are you going to get your all-night New Year's Eve permit, something that we're going to be talking about soon. So that's going to be a big focus. And then also just getting feedback through surveys and other vehicles from our members to make sure that as we go into 2023, our legislative, our policy agenda is based on things that we know our members really need. The past couple of years due to the pandemic has just been focused on responding to the pandemic crisis. Every single moment, it's like the end of days. And it was really, really scary. But now, obviously, we're not out of the pandemic, but I hope we've just emerged from the worst of it. And now we're starting to focus on, okay, what do we need going forward that's not directly pandemic related? It's kind of like rewinding back to the beginning of 2020 when we had just released our 20 policy ideas for 2020, all excited. We're going to go out to advocate for all this stuff.
I remember that.
Out the window. So we need to develop the permanent outdoor dining program that's standardized, that's sustainable as we transition from the temporary emergency program. We need to look at the temporary liquor license law, which we thankfully got passed, allowing restaurants and bars to get their liquor license months sooner because of all the backlog and delay at the state liquor authority. There's some amendments to further speed that up. There's certainly things related to labor laws, making sure that the focus is on education and compliance first, and penalties and these big lawsuits, last as a last resort. Reducing fines, further streamlining the permanent licensing process. We have a great bill that's going to be passed that's going to create an online portal for small businesses, one place where they can manage all their permits, licenses, outstanding balances with the city of New York in one easy to access account. Things that you would think,
I always have to reset my password, my
but
username. Every time I go to use something like that, it's like start from the beginning.
Yeah,
it's a mess.
so really, kind of focusing on things that are going to have a material, impact on businesses. There's still some big picture things on a federal level. 65% of restaurants in New York got shut out of the Federal Restaurant Revitalization Fund grant because the money was quickly exhausted. Federal government had an opportunity to replenish it. Shamefully, they failed to do so. Highly unlikely at this point that'll get replenished.
I saw something about reducing the EIDL terms and sort of a forgiveness period if you've made payments on time, and bringing the interest rate down from 3.75 to 1. It was from
so there's some things
like that
are I think could happen. Hopefully, we'll see. We have a lot of members that got a round one paycheck protection program loan. And because they were shut down for hundreds and hundreds of days and their employees left, they were unable to use 60% of it on payroll. So what was intended to be a loan that was converted into a grant has now just remained a loan, and the banks have decided to collect after 2 years instead of 5 years, which the law allowed them to. So we're trying to get a bill that will change that to say the terms don't change, but you can get a new 24-week period in which you use that money, 60% of it on payroll, and we'll forgive the loan.
Just as they would have in the original time period, which was a very specific 24-week period. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's the conversation that we're talking about, right? Who would say these things? Who would bring those issues to light? A million different phone calls going in all different, leaders, political leaders' offices. That wouldn't work. It needs to be unified, and you got to hold them accountable. You do have to call them. I know the Alliance sends out surveys. Fill them out. If you're watching this video, that's not something, everybody else will fill it out. They'll know the answer. We don't know the answer. We need to hear from everyone. You need to contribute your voice, your concerns, the good, the bad, the ugly. And when there's emails that say, hey, contact your local leader, the Alliance has literally, all you have to do is click a button, and what you contact them about, the language, everything is done for you. You're on top of everything. You've made it so easy for people to share their voice the way it needs to be delivered.
One restaurateur's voice is impactful. Thousands and thousands of restaurants' voices working collectively is very, very powerful. And you have power as an individual. Think of elected officials. People in government, people talk crap about them, they say all this stuff, but also recognize it is a very tough job. I always joke around with people in government. I say, my constituency is all the restaurant nightlife people. I have to deal with all of their issues. You, as a person in government, you have to deal with everybody's issues. So you have someone saying, why haven't you filled that pothole? What's wrong with the schools? What about public housing? What about the teachers? What about this? What about that?
A lot.
And it never goes on. So there's just this, orchestra and opera of all these different voices all trying to get the attention. So how do restaurants or how do any constituency make sure that their voice breaks through all of that noise? And you do that by being organized, speaking with a voice, having clear, direct policy ideas, opinions, positions on different matters, and then working together to communicate them. And that's really what we're trying to do. So when we do send out an email, like you said, through the Hospitality Alliance saying contact your elected official about this or that matter, it is important. It doesn't take that much time. We know people are busy. We prioritize. There's always time. It just is based on how you balance your time and what your priorities are. And if your priority is to be about making positive change, you have to make time to send those emails, make those phone calls. And in our industry, you probably have a lot of political relationships that you don't even realize. Your local council member comes in with their significant other for dinner, and they come to your bar, they host a fundraiser at your place, they come and ask for you to prepare some meals for, the local, event or for a local shelter or whatever it may be. And you are there, no questions asked, constantly supporting. So think about those different ways that you interact with folks in government and just your community at large, because those are very valuable relationships that can certainly be, used and strengthen those partnerships to make sure that, your interests, your voice, your experience, your perspectives are being heard and acted upon.
I think a big concern that restaurants have had historically is they want to stay under the radar. They've been so afraid of the government, right? Whatever that means in any different context, that they've been scared. I was exposed to it because my dad knew I was a lawyer for restaurants, and he's like, screw it. It's going to benefit you. You're going to be out there. You're going to put your voice. You're going to meet more people. They're going to see how much you care about the industry, and you're going to do it. But most people are not going to do that so easily, although they should, because without that voice, there's no voice, and you're not better off by not participating. So at the very least, you should participate. I've actually seen it where you actually feel more comfortable the more you participate in this conversation. And, that's how you really protect yourself, is by being taken seriously. Letting them know you're going to stand up, you're going to have your boundaries, you're also going to be cooperative in terms of being fair. And I think you have done an impressive job. The Alliance, the organization in general, has done an impressive job with fielding all of these complaints, these issues that restaurants are doing, but it's a filtered megaphone rather than just a megaphone, right? Or 1,000 different megaphones going off at the same time. Super important, because without it, you're just a noisemaker rather than an organization that has, calm, calculated, well thought out, organized voice, which is what I think you have accomplished.
So as a business owner, you should not and you cannot be scared of speaking your voice.
Exactly.
I don't mean to downplay this. I don't mean to sound like an asshole. People should not be scared.
They should.
There are women right now in Iran that are risking their lives by removing their hijab and showing their hair because of what they believe in, because of freedom. And there are examples all throughout history of people who put their lives, their families' lives, their communities' lives at significant risk to do better, to create a better life. Those are real risks. Speaking out as a small business owner, well, I get it. It's scary. You may not want to yell publicly about the health department because you feel you got an unfair inspection, or another government agency for over-inspecting you, or implementing rules too aggressively. But you'll get through it.
Yep.
It's a different type of bravery, but it's being brave nonetheless. You need to speak out. And if you're a member of the Hospitality Alliance, or hopefully a member of any local association, merchant group, and you speak out because you feel that you are being unjustly targeted by government, and then government comes and targets you again, well, guess what? You have an even bigger microphone, an even larger bullhorn to make your voice heard. And that's what we said before. Don't talk about it, be about it.
Yep.
So we need to be out there, we need our voice to be heard, but we need to follow up with action. Don't be a jerk, don't be a wise guy, be smart, be thoughtful, be respectful. But that doesn't mean you can't be loud, it doesn't mean you can't be aggressive, and it doesn't mean you can't call out injustices when you see them. And you need to be organized. You need to have a hospitality alliance that can be there to speak collectively on behalf of the industry, but also that can help individually amplify your voice and guide you through what are challenging situations, what are scary situations. But that's what it's about. And we are stronger when we are together. And over the past 10 years, unifying thousands of these small businesses and their teams throughout the 5 boroughs have given us the experience to know that when we want to affect change, we can make change happen.
Yeah, and if nothing else, just participating, think of the Alliance as your go-to coffee break where you're going to sit down, you're going to review it, you're going to catch up. They've done all the work. The events are excellent, whether it's, a panel discussion about, XYZ topics, or, a happy hour, or some other small, big, large event. If you get a chance to go to them, find your, Alliance buddies, if you will, and just go to all of them. That's your escape. You get to meet, you get to see what other people are working on, who's moving and shaking in the industry, who's having struggles, what are their struggles so they don't affect you. It's just an amazing organization, and we're really, really proud to be aligned with you and support it. You know that anytime you call KI Legal, you call me, the firm in any capacity, it's a yes before you even ask me the question.
Don't talk about it, be about it. That's why we love you, and that's why we're there. And listen, I know a lot of serious stuff and kind of doom and gloom and frustrations, but it's also about a lot of fun. And we talked about our party, and one of the things that we've been able to do that's so much fun through the Hospitality Alliance is we have, our after the holidays holiday party, because historically and even now, our industry is busy hosting the parties for the holiday season. So we have our after the holidays holiday party, which we bring everyone together and celebrate as an industry. We had our big 10th anniversary. We have awards. We were doing a ping pong slam, which is restaurants competing against each other in ping pong. So it's also a really fun community. And it can be serious at times. It is serious all the time, but it's also fun a lot of the time. And that's what our community is about, is getting together, because we are busy nights, weekends, holidays, doing all this craziness in the business. But it's nice to be able to cut together, let loose, share our experiences, in a fun environment. And I know before you let me go, I have a question for you, maybe 2 questions.
Okay.
My first one is, what do you think your dad's favorite thing about the restaurant business is? I'm sure there was a lot.
I know the answer.
There was one thing.
There's no question. It was people. He knew the names of every baby in the stroller down the block. He loved the people. There were people every year that he would bring to Easter party at the house, like customers. And that was guests from the restaurant that maybe he just met 2 weeks ago, but somehow sparked a conversation. There was no question that that's what he loved the most. That's like hands down, that's his favorite thing. That was his favorite thing about the industry. That's what kept him there.
So I know KI Legal, you have this whole legal process, practice, and you get to do everything and kind of stay in the restaurant space, but you also do have the restaurant.
Yeah.
And when you go over there, because I know you dedicate a lot of time to that project as well, what's your favorite thing about the restaurant business?
So much, actually. I think one of the main reasons I did the project was to continue something that gave so many people an opportunity. I always said that, everything I have and don't have is from that one little diner on Greenwich and Warren, and then he opened in 1989, and then Tribeca's Kitchen, right? But when he passed, there were people that were with him for 30 years that started out as a dishwasher and just stayed with him and grew with him, but they were owners of the business when he passed with us when we opened it, right, Tribeca's Kitchen. And so what happens to them, right? What happens to the employees? It's crazy that, I'm an employment defense lawyer. That's how I started, was wage and hour cases, defending audits, all of that stuff. But my whole practice, everything I tell my clients to do is compliance is not how do I get around this? It's how do I embrace it, right? Yes, customers first, right? Your guests first, your clients first, but that can't happen. You can't put them first unless you put your employees first. And that will change the culture. That will change the work environment. That will limit, turnover. That will increase retention. That will have the best and the brightest and the, biggest talent in whatever industry you're in, not just hospitality. So for me, obviously my dad's legacy and being able to connect with people my dad touched 25 years ago, and here they are donating $5 to the GoFundMe when he passed and writing about what happened 25 years ago, but also being a case study for my clients, whether we succeed or not, how it goes. I'm very proud of what we've built there, and I'm confident in it. But from an employment standpoint, I have people that are now trained by amazing chefs that would have never worked in any place other than a diner, and my dad was very progressive and good with it, but they've since been trained. We've brought in people to train them, excellent chefs, excellent beverage managers, people that have taught them how to serve, different steps of service, things that was beyond what my dad was doing at that point. My dad took it from zero to where he left it over 30 years. That was amazing, but it's a place of opportunity, and that is critically important to be maintained, right? And you got to keep that growth opportunity for them in existence, and I thrive on that here as well.
So you grow up as a kid in the diner with your dad. As a young man, you worked in the diner, then you ended up transitioning the restaurant, helping operate the restaurant, and then you have your law practice. So what does your lifelong experience in the restaurant industry lend to your legal practice and how you work with your restaurant clients?
I think the biggest thing is can be summarized in something I tell my clients every time I get a new restaurant client. I know what you tell me and I know what you don't tell me, right? So just get to it, right? Tell me. There are realities in this industry that, traditional lawyer says, this is the law, it's black and white, and, this is it, right? You don't like it, and I can't help you, That's not how it works. The industry has a lot of areas that they can't just be fixed overnight. And so an approach from a legal standpoint that just assumes it can is never going to help these restaurants grow even a little bit at a time. So a good restaurant lawyer should know the industry in and out and give them business advice, industry options, right? How are other people doing it? And start chipping away at some of your problems, right? If you have some immigration related issues, that's a reality of our business. That doesn't mean you have to have every other issue, right? There are ways around little pieces of it, and so that keeps you going. You're less exposed than you were yesterday, and you keep making that one step forward. You can't see the end of the forest. Can you see one step in front of you? Yes, take that step. Can you see one more step? And so that's how we've approached it. It's not all or nothing, it's piecemeal, and that is something that only if you've lived in the industry do you understand. You can't have a perfect operation ever. There's always going to be problems with it, and that doesn't mean you do nothing,
Judge Rigie closes this case, hire KI Legal.
Thank you so much, Andrew. You've been amazing, man. It's been a lot of fun. To another 10 years, brother.
You got it, man.
And a couple trips to the Bahamas.
Indeed.